We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. A little under the weather, so not a live episode. Who knows how many times I'll have to stop and sniffle and sneeze and all that. Allergies getting the best of me once again. First time in a while, but there we go. Got one live right here, but going to try and minimize that as much as possible. So a heavily produced episode of Gators Breakdown, so you don't have to hear a ton of sniffles and sneezes and all that kind of stuff here. So we'll talk what Billy Napier, Graham Mertz, Jason Marshall had to say to the media on Monday about the bye week and kind of prepping for the rest of the season. And we'll talk a little bit of recruiting as well, of course, with the decommitment of Demetrius Samuel. We'll take a big picture look at recruiting. Not a whole lot there, but some stuff, of course, that needs to be said with where the Gators are at program-wise and how that affects recruiting. So everybody hit that like button, subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown, but smash that like button. It really helps. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Really, really helps us out. And, of course, if you want to support even more, you get even more interaction. Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. Extra episodes. You get those chat episodes, ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown. But, of course, to take part in those chat episodes, get there on that Discord. You can have conversations all day, every day in text form, but we do have those chats there as well. So a lot of good stuff going on. Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. So, all right, let's get this episode going. As I mentioned, Billy Napier, Graham Mertz, Jason Marshall, they all spoke to the media on Monday. So let's hear from those guys on what transpired over the last week.
I do think it was good for our guys to have a couple of days off. I think we didn't coddle them, I would tell you that. I mean, I think it was real in there for 3 days. So we worked extremely hard Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We were in full pads. We got after it, and then I think committed to them, giving them Friday and Saturday off, and then we were back in the building yesterday.
How much, you talked about not coddling them last week. How much do you challenge this team physically, particularly with, run-heavy team coming in UCF that's going to try to establish that? No,
I mean, I would tell you that it was extremely competitive last week, and it was a lot of fun, to be quite honest. I mean, and I think you'll have a chance to talk with players. They can give you more insight into that. But, yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. It was physical. It was fast. It was game-like. It was very competitive. It was scored. It was graded. I mean, it was a lot of fun to be a part of. So I'm hopeful that we got better. I feel as if we got better last week.
Your finger on defensively during the bye week that you feel like maybe you addressed and kind of got fixed?
Yeah, I think we were a little closer the last time we were out, but still, I think between play process, I think, playing against tempo, I think that, overall that group needs a little bit more consistency. I think our ability to do it down in, down out, I think we did a good job on third down at times. But like we talked about before, there's 4 or 5 possessions in the game where, it's like we disappear, whether it was the tempo possession where they scored in the first half and then the 2-minute possession right before the half. Those are 2 examples of where we're playing really good defense for a half, but we got 2 possessions where we kind of fall apart. So all the research that we did in this past week, it's alignment, it's assignment, it's techniques, it's fundamentals. Those are the areas that we spent a lot of our time on this past week.
You mentioned making some changes, maybe personnel-wise. Are there a couple of guys maybe that popped in that Mississippi State game that you were like, okay, we need to get X player a little bit more involved?
I think a guy that I thought has been very productive, Jack Pyburn's had a lot of production, and I think he played in that game. I thought he played well. He'd be a guy that would be at the top of the list, in my opinion. I think some of the young backers are good players. They continue to get a little bit better. We saw those guys take a step in the right direction last week. And then, we have to generate some form of a pass rush. We've got to find a way to affect the quarterback. And I think that's an area where we're evaluating all the personnel that we're trying to use, especially on third down. And then we've got various technical things that we're working on, scramble drills. I think just in general, some situations. But overall, I think the personnel is always up for evaluation.
Win over Mississippi State was the first time you won a Division I game in a while. Was there an emotional lift that you felt with the team getting that win?
Yeah, I think, you ask anybody on our team, we know that we left a lot out there. I think it felt great to win. I know the guys in the locker room were fired up, ready to get into the bye week. I think it fueled our bye week a little bit too. We had 3 really competitive, really good days of practice. We got better as a team coming off of that. So it felt good to win. Always feels good to win. But I think in the long run, it helped us going into the bye, really maximize the bye.
Billy said last week was they didn't coddle you guys with those 3 practices. Can you just kind of take us to what the intensity was like and what those practices were like during the open week?
They were fun. I think that one thing that, for me, playing 6 years of college football, you've had a lot of bye weeks, and you can get into the bye, and it can go 2 ways. Like, you can get better, or you can just kind of maintain or get worse. So there's 3 different ways you can go. I think Coach did a great job of, we split the team up into 2. It was kind of like the spring game. So we had 2 teams, and every period was a competition. And at the end, it was just for gassers. So you run if you lose, but ramped up the competition. Guys were flying around, making plays. And that's what we needed. We needed to start fast each and every one of those practices because we need to do a better job of starting fast in the game. So I think that the way we set it up was fantastic. And I thought the guys attacked it, and we definitely got better through the bye.
You've never seen someone split up the team like that during the bye week?
No, never. Felt like it was like fall camp again. But it was fun. I think back to my bye weeks, like it was always like, okay, the young bucks get in, they go and scrimmage for the end of the practice. But no, we were rolling 1s-on-1s, 2s-on-2s, competing all day for 3 days. So it was.
Players pick them, coach?
No, it was coaches. Yeah, it was pretty similar to the spring game, like that kind of setup.
Was this whole open mix sort of like a reboot in a way?
Kind of. I think that for us, it was like we've been rolling since before camp. So for us, just kind of get a day and a half just to sit back and relax and kind of recenter, refocus. It was definitely good for a lot of guys.
You mentioned the buy-in and the execution and just how much guys care. Is it frustrating to not see that translate into the results you guys want during games? And have you thought about what needs to occur to kind of get the product that you guys have all been proud of in practices to show up on Saturdays?
Yeah. We're 4 games into the season. I think that there's a lot of ball left to be played. And I think that that's what this team realizes. Look, we have 8 more opportunities to go play, and we need to be ready for them. We got to start fast. We got to execute. We know what we've done wrong. We know how to fix it. We've addressed it. But for us, we're just excited just for this next opportunity to go play, because we know what we got. We know that we haven't put our best ball on tape yet. We're looking forward to it. So it all comes down to execution, man. Just doing your job. When you got 11 guys on the field, we need 11 to make as many plays as they can, just doing their job.
What was kind of the focus for the defense throughout the bye week, and what progress do you feel like you guys were able to make?
Just focusing on, the small details. That's pretty much the main thing. Going out there and watching film, looking at the things that we did wrong, looking at the things that we can fix, and ultimately, just going out there, starting fast, and hopefully we start fast this week.
How intense was the bye week? Were the bye week practices, and have you had any bye week practices, anything like that before?
I haven't had a bye week practice how we practiced last week. It was very intense, very competitive. 1s-on-1s, 2s-on-2s. If you came out there, it looked like we was playing a full-on game. And, everybody had a lot of juice, excited. So I feel like we got a lot of work done.
Were you all surprised at that? People said that we weren't going to coddle. I'm like, what were you expecting? And when did you realize, hey, this isn't business as usual?
Coming out to practice, and everybody, no matter what the record is, no matter what anything is, just coming out there and practicing hard, even though we don't have an opponent this week, last week, but just coming out and practicing hard.
All this sounds good on the surface, and I hope for their sake it's all true and that the prep and the bye week pays off. These are just words until we see it. I'll go to another question Napier was asked on Monday, and that certainly lets me know he gets where he's at right now. The question was, it's your 30th game here at Florida. Where do you feel like the program has made the most strides? And I know the results aren't what you wanted, but what is it going to take it to flip that script a little? And Napier responds, ultimately, I think we've built a lot of good systems in terms of in-house, how we operate overall, the workflow. Everything is up and running. Maybe that wasn't the case when we first got here. I think we've done a good job of adjusting to the landscape. For every 6 months we were here in the beginning, it just continued to change. But yeah, I think we've got more depth. I think the makeup of our team just don't have a ton of headaches day in and day out relative to their decision-making and character. I feel really good about that part, but here's the kicker, guys. But ultimately, I think we've had this conversation many times. We've got to go produce on the grass. Twice this year, we didn't play up to our potential, in my opinion. We need to continue to focus on what's going to help us perform better. I think ultimately, any time we spend on anything else is a waste of time. We got to get consumed with the things that will get the result we want and try to be process-oriented. That's what we're trying to do. So he certainly senses the pressure, certainly feels the disconnect of not producing when it counts. That doesn't mean he knows how to fix it. But it does represent an acknowledgement of the situation. But at the same time, that words are meaningless. We know that. Much of this is very familiar to what we were hearing coming into this season about this team, only for it to look like there was no sense of urgency, or that it was a complete surprise that whatever happens on the practice field doesn't translate to game day performance. Either way, we've discussed this, that's a problem. So I have a hard time believing that the bye week is just this magic elixir. Teams don't change that much during the bye week. It's very rare. Now, a lot of people will go back in 2005 and Urban Meyer and how he was able to change an offense and, beat a Georgia team at, when he had a bye week before that, and just changing a lot of stuff about the team. It usually doesn't work that way. But even if this team does find something, you have to ask yourself, is it too little too late? Where was this sense of urgency coming into the season? We all knew how hard the schedule was. We all knew how critical this season was for Billy Napier and his future. And the games, against a similar opponent so far, weren't even close. The Miami game wasn't close. A&M game really wasn't that close. So why should we believe, besides blind hope, that's already really been shattered? I have hope for their sake that they have figured something out. And at least enough to get a big win against Central Florida this week. But is it enough for the rest of the season? Is it enough to steal a few wins against Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss? Very, very doubtful. I mean, he acknowledges it. Whatever there is we can sit here and say whatever we want to say. That this last bye week, hey, it was good. We tried hard. We're trying to fix some things. We went really tough. Not going to coddle them. We went one-on-ones, 2 versus 2s. But that doesn't mean it's going to pay off. It's got to translate on the field. So Napier mentions getting the right personnel on the field, and most of this was featured on the defense, and mentions Jack Pyburn specifically at edge. And there's some data that backs that up as well. Once Napier, he was the only one he named by name. And I think we all saw it in the Mississippi State game. He had his best game. Pyburn is the highest graded edge on Pro Football Focus. Not as many snaps as TJ Searcy, but enough to see a trend. The best pass rush number so far this season for a game comes from Pyburn against Mississippi State. He graded out with a 64.5 pass rush grade compared to TJ Searcy's 54.5. So 10 points higher in the Mississippi State game. Now, take Pro Football Focus however you want. I know they're very polarizing. I don't use it for everything at all, but it's a good another way to look at it. Like, what do you see with your eyes, and does that kind of translate? I think it does here. Overall for the game, Searcy was a bit higher, and that was just a pass rush grade. Pyburn 64.5, TJ Searcy 54.5. Overall for the game, Searcy was higher, but only a very little. 68 overall for Searcy, 67.4 for Pyburn. Their grades overall for the Mississippi State game. On the season, it's not really great for either guy, but Pyburn's pass rush grade is 59.1. Oddly enough, that would rank 591st. While Searcy checks in 54.5, so both just below average. But in true pass sets, dug a little deeper here, true pass sets where screens, play action, rollouts are thrown out, Pyburn grades out a healthy 65.6. That's ranked 306th in the country. Of course, we'd love to have somebody higher than that. I'm not trying to sit here and hype up Jack Pyburn as this great edge player in the SEC for the Gators in the country. Not what I'm saying at all. But when Billy Napier says he needs to be on the field more, these Pro Football Focus grades bear that out. So in those true pass sets, Pyburn grades out at a healthy 65.6. As I said, ranks 306th. While Searcy grades out 54.1. So about 11 points higher for Pyburn than Searcy on Pro Football Focus in true pass sets. Caleb Banks is the highest player up front with a grade of 70.5. So as Napier mentions, getting more out of the pass rush. Banks, Pyburn, Sapp, they may need to be on the field as much as possible in passing situations if you want to go by Pro Football Focus grades here. Those are your best pass rushers right now. Banks, and at different positions. Banks, Pyburn, Sapp. So if Florida's in those passing, rush passing situations, it's third and long, third and passing situations. Look, see who's on the field. It needs to be Banks, Pyburn, Sapp. So Napier also mentioned young linebackers improving, and while he didn't name specific players, Jaden Robinson, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs fit that description. And while the Gators haven't fixed their defensive issues from previous years, there's some bright spots on that side of the ball. And of course, we all know about second-year linebacker Grayson Pup Howard, his impact as a second-year player. I mean, he's young as well, but I don't think Napier was really mentioning him here because we know what he brings to the table. He's a starter and all that. So, excuse me for a second. There we go. Told you. You go get some of that here. Can't get rid of it all. But of course, Grayson Pup Howard, his impact as a second-year player, already proving to be one of the best defenders for the Gators so far this year. From the first snap of this season, it was clear Howard had earned his starting role, and he hasn't looked back. Led Florida with 6 tackles in the season opener against Miami. Leads the team in tackles right now with 20. Grades out as Florida's best defender against the run, thanks to his pretty sure tackling. But going back to what Napier said, another sure tackler who needs more playing time, it might be Jaden Robinson, as he mentions getting some young backers some playing time. Jaden Robinson also in his second season. Though he hasn't played nearly as much as Howard, Pro Football Focus grades Robinson as the best tackler on the entire defense. And we know that's a huge issue on that side of the ball. Hasn't really been an issue at linebacker. Pup Howard, high graded. Robinson, really highly graded. The best guy on the defense. So as Florida looks for answers during the bye week, of course, last week and getting ready for the rest of the season to fix this struggling defense, turning to more Pup Howard, more Jaden Robinson, may provide the help needed there. But also those young backers. Will we see more of Miles Graham as he gets healthy? Aaron Childs is, what was preseason labeled as a workout monster for a true freshman. Derek Wingo hasn't provided much. RJ Moten hasn't provided much. Can those two highly rated freshmen get more snaps? So overall for the defense, look, this is year 3 of the same system. We're still hearing about alignment issues, run fits, issues getting signals in, blown assignments, missed tackles. All these issues supposed to be fixed in a bye week? It sounds nice on the surface, as I said. And there seems to be a sense of realization. But man, I just don't know. I hope so. I hope so. But this is 3 years of this same defense, and it hasn't done much. Color me skeptical if a bye week's supposed to get this fixed. So I mentioned, as I said, kind of a shorter episode here, trying to recover for UCF preview later this week. So we'll get back to it. But recruiting. And won't spend too much time here. But on Monday, Demetrius Samuel, he decommits from the Gators. Palm Bay, Florida, 4-star safety, flipped his commitment from Florida back to Syracuse. The Gators originally had flipped Samuel from Syracuse when added him to the 25 class back in late July, of course. He was originally a 2026 recruit, reclassified for the 2025 class. He was also the lone safety. Florida had committed for the 25 class. So Florida now has 13 commitments for the class, and the outlook is pretty bleak. Florida's currently 30th in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Guys, that's good for 13th out of 16 schools in the SEC. Only in front of Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. So look, Samuel alone, this really didn't turn a whole lot of heads, of course. Got a lot bigger things to worry about. But Samuel alone isn't the reason recruiting isn't heading in the right direction. This decommitment, it's not a signal necessarily. We know where this is heading. The signal, it happened when the outcome of the Miami game and the outcome of the Texas A&M game. But this happening does bring it's a good time to discuss big picture recruiting. With all the questions surrounding Billy Napier, the support needed for recruiting, look, that's being held off. That support, they're holding off from making the necessary contributions to get players. There's so many questions surrounding this coaching staff right now that who's going to buy in? We all know what happens in recruiting right now with NIL and stuff. So where those funds come from? There's not the buy-in's not there right now till we get more answers, till we see where this thing is headed. It doesn't look like it's heading in the right direction. But let's not act like players, the type of players Florida needs, are beating down the door to play for Florida anyway. And this is where I fought back on the thought of keeping Napier with a 6-6, 7-5 overall record. What's that going to do for recruiting? Absolutely nothing. Where's the hope that it gets any better? Recruiting already hasn't been good enough. We see that on the field. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think there's more talent than what we've seen. Coaching and development, holding it back in my eyes. I think that's why we ultimately get a firing this year. But it hasn't been good enough anyway. And now it's getting worse. So that's supposed to give us better results in the coming years on the field? No. 13th recruiting in the SEC, that's not going to cut it. Not enough elite prospects are interested. And what has been shown to make them believe? I'm glad there's a few that want to be Gators. That's not enough. There's enough evidence on and off the field that this thing isn't heading in the right direction. So I haven't really talked much recruiting. There haven't really been much to talk about, really. It was probably going to start this way with some decommitments in the class, but all the questions surrounding where this program is headed. But the support isn't there right now. So that's one hurdle. But with guys not really beating down the door anyway, it's a wait and see approach for support. It's a wait and see approach for recruits. Where's this thing headed? Is Billy Napier going to be here? Can I even believe that he's going to put me in a situation, if he's still the head coach, put me in the best situation? How much negative recruiting do you think is going to be going on out there with that? Even if he somehow survives with a 6-6, 7-5 record. All you got to do is just look at production right now and say, you really want to go there? And you're still going to be fighting down, well, if it's a bad year in 2025, he's not going to be there. So that's why Florida, severing the ties is probably the best move. Recruiting isn't going to pick up because Billy Napier is retained. 6-6, that's not good enough anyway. Forget about recruiting. 7-5 in year 3. That's not good enough. Recruiting isn't going to turn around because there's some confidence Billy Napier is going to be the guy. This is going to be every year occurrence until you get outstanding results on the field and can build off that. That's going to be a while. Because it ain't going to happen this year. And what is the belief it's going to happen next year? So it cleans, forget about results on the field right now. Just the direction of the program. Recruiting is a big part of that. It's also not heading in the right direction. I think you have your answer. All right, guys. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. UCF preview later this week, of course. Previewing the Central Florida Golden Knights. They don't like to be called that, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, Florida, Central Florida Golden Knights. Saturday, there will be a preview later on this week right here on Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.